Hello everyone. Today's story is not just about betrayal, it's about the moment silence finally breaks. Imagine being humiliated in front of hundreds, and the one person who should protect you becomes the one who destroys you. But what happens next is something no one in that room saw coming. The glass in my hand trembled the second he smiled. Not a warm smile. Not even polite. It was the kind that warned you something inside him had already decided your fate. My name is Clara Whitmore. I'm 39. Have you ever realized the person meant to protect you is the one everyone is silently afraid of? The chandelier above us flickered like it was struggling to stay alive. Just like the room. 500 guests, dressed in gold and soft laughter, pretending not to hear my mother-in-law's voice slicing through the air again. Oh darling, she smirked, lifting her glass. You still don't understand how to behave in this family. A few people laughed. Not loudly, just enough. I felt it in my ribs before it even happened, that familiar tightening. Like my body knew the script before I did. I do understand, I said quietly. Silence fell wrong. Heavy. Like furniture had shifted without warning. She tilted her head, amused. Oh. Then why do you still look like you don't belong? That's when I looked at him. My husband. He didn't defend me. He didn't blink. He just took a step closer. And the room seemed to lean in. And in that moment I realized something cold and final. This wasn't a marriage. It was a stage, and I had just forgotten my role. He didn't raise his voice. That would have been easier, louder, something people could react to. Instead his hand moved fast and quiet, like it had done this before. A sharp crack echoed through my ribs. Not the sound, the feeling, like something inside me snapped out of place. The glass slipped from my fingers and shattered across the marble floor, the sound ringing too late, like the room was catching up. Someone gasped. Someone laughed. My mother-in-law didn't even flinch. She just sighed, swirling her drink. See? This is why she embarrasses us. I couldn't breathe. Not fully. Not properly. Every inhale felt like broken glass pressing deeper under my skin. But I stood there. Because falling would have made it real. And I wasn't ready for that. He leaned closer, his voice low enough that only I could hear. Don't ever speak over my mother again. His words were calm. Controlled. Like he was correcting a mistake. Not breaking something inside me. Around us, whispers started spreading, soft, hungry, alive. Did you see that? She deserved it. Always too much attitude. The chandelier flickered again. I tasted something metallic at the back of my throat, but I smiled. Small. Careful. Because I suddenly understood the rule of this house. Pain was allowed. But dignity had to be performed. So I straightened my dress, slowly reached for my phone, and stepped back into the light. And that's when I dialed the one number I had never used before. The phone rang once. Twice. I could feel his eyes on me now, not angry. Not yet. Just curious. Like I had done something mildly inconvenient. Clara, he said softly, almost amused, put the phone away. I didn't. My fingers tightened around it, even as another wave of pain climbed up my side, sharp and slow, like it wanted to be noticed. On the third ring, someone picked up. I didn't say hello. I didn't explain. I just whispered, steady enough that it surprised even me. Dad, it's time. Silence on the other end. Not confusion. Not questions. Just a quiet breath, like a door opening somewhere far away. Are you safe? He asked. I looked up. 500 people. Crystal glasses. Golden light. My husband standing too close. My mother-in-law watching me like I was a show she had already paid for. And suddenly, the room felt smaller. No, I said. Another pause. Then calm. Precise. Okay. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly. My husband chuckled under his breath, shaking his head. Calling for help. In front of everyone. A few guests smirked. Someone whispered again. I could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down harder than the pain in my ribs. But something had shifted. Not around me. Inside me. For the first time that night. I wasn't trying to survive the moment. I was waiting. I reached for the edge of the table to steady myself, my fingers brushing against the silver anniversary candle in the center. Its flame flickered wildly, then steadied. Like it knew something I didn't. And across the room near the entrance, I heard the doors unlock. The doors didn't burst open. They opened slowly, deliberately, like whoever stood behind them knew the room would wait. And it did. Every whisper folded into silence. Even the chandelier seemed to hold its breath. My husband turned first, irritation flashing across his face. What now? 3 men stepped inside. Not loud. Not rushed. Just certain. Black suits. No expressions. Behind them, a 4th figure. Older. Familiar. My father didn't look at me. Not immediately. His gaze moved across the room instead, scanning faces, reading reactions, measuring the silence like it was evidence. Then his eyes landed on my husband. And stopped. You raised your hand, my father said calmly. No accusation. No anger. Just a statement. My husband let out a short laugh. This is a private family matter. Was it? My father replied, glancing briefly at the guests. Because it looks like a public performance. A ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. My mother-in-law stepped forward, her voice sharp. You don't get to walk in here and... Sit down, my father said. Not loudly. But something in his tone cut through her completely. She froze. She froze. And slowly sat back. I watched all of it without moving, my hand still resting near the candle. Its flame flickered again, reflecting in the polished table, splitting into 2 identical lights. For a second it felt like I was watching another version of myself, one who hadn't stayed silent for so long. My husband's jaw tightened. You think you can intimidate me in my own event? My father stepped closer. No, he said quietly. Then he reached into his coat and placed a thin folder on the table between us. The sound it made was softer than I expected, but somehow heavier than everything that came before it. No one touched the folder. Not at first. It just sat there, thin, quiet, like it didn't need attention to be dangerous. My husband looked down at it, then back at my father, a slow smirk spreading across his face. What is this? Some kind of threat? My father didn't answer. He simply turned the folder slightly, aligning it perfectly with the edge of the table. Precise. Controlled. Open it, he said. The room leaned in again. I could hear fabric shifting, heels adjusting, someone holding their breath too long. My husband let out a short laugh and flipped it open with 2 fingers. Careless, dismissive. That lasted exactly 3 seconds. His expression didn't change dramatically. It was smaller than that. A flicker. A tightening at the corner of his mouth. Then his eyes moved faster, scanning, rereading. What is this? He asked again, but this time, it wasn't mocking. My father's voice stayed even. Ownership documents. Debt transfers. Legal notices. Pause. Then, for your company. The words didn't land loudly, but they spread. Like ink in water. My mother-in-law stood up halfway. That's impossible. My father finally looked at me. Just for a second. And in that glance, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not pity. Not concern. Respect. He doesn't own it anymore, my father continued. Not after tonight. The whispers changed. They weren't amused anymore. They were sharp, alert, shifting direction. My husband's hand tightened around the paper. You think this means anything? You think you can just walk in and... I didn't walk in, my father interrupted. Another pause. Then quietly. You invited this. The moment you forgot who she was. Silence crashed over the room. I didn't move. Didn't speak. But for the first time, the pain in my ribs felt distant. Like it belonged to someone I used to be. The candle flame in front of me steadied again. Taken. And my husband, for the first time that night, looked uncertain. The room didn't explode. It shifted. Quietly, dangerously, like the ground had tilted just enough for everyone to notice. My husband closed the folder slowly this time. Not careless anymore. Careful. Measured. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice had lost something, that sharp edge it used to cut me with. My father didn't react. He simply stepped aside, just enough for the 3 men behind him to move forward. One of them placed another document on the table. Then another. Each one landing softer than the last, but somehow heavier. Bank confirmations, the man said. Transfer of controlling shares. Legal enforcement effective immediately. The words sounded clinical. But the effect wasn't. Around us, the whispers turned into distance. People stepping back, subtly separating themselves from him. From us. My mother-in-law's voice cracked for the first time. You planned this. No one answered her. Because the truth was already sitting in front of her. I let my fingers brush the candle again. Warm. Steady. For years I had learned how to read silence. The kind that comes before anger, before humiliation, before pain. But this silence, this was different. This one belonged to consequences. My husband looked at me now. Really looked. Not as something beneath him. Not as someone to control. But as a variable he hadn't calculated. You did this, he asked. I held his gaze. Didn't nod. Didn't smile. Because the answer didn't need words. It was in the way the room had already chosen its side. And for the first time in years. It wasn't his. The chandelier above us stopped flickering. Perfectly still. Like the performance was finally over. No one came closer to him anymore. It wasn't announced that it wasn't obvious. But you could feel it, the invisible line forming around him. 500 guests. And suddenly he was alone. My mother-in-law stood frozen beside him, her lips slightly parted, like she was still trying to find the version of reality where she was in control. This is ridiculous, she said, but her voice didn't carry the way it used to. It barely reached the table. No one echoed her. No one laughed. My husband exhaled slowly, then straightened his jacket like that would fix something deeper. You think taking a company changes anything? He looked at me again, searching. For years, he added, quieter now, you stayed quiet. That word hung in the air. Quiet. As if it had been my role, my identity, something he owned. I let the silence stretch. Not as weakness, but as choice. Then I spoke, not loud, not sharp, just clear. For years, I was learning. A shift. Subtle, but real. The kind that doesn't reverse. He frowned slightly. Learning what? I glanced at the candle. Its flame stood still now, unwavering, casting a soft light across the broken glass still scattered on the floor. Where everything was, I said. Another pause. His jaw tightened again, but this time, it wasn't control. It was realization. Because this wasn't just about tonight. It never was. The documents. The timing. The call. All of it had been waiting, patiently, quietly, just like I had. My father stepped back, giving the moment space, letting it belong to me. And in that space, something inside me settled. Not anger. Not revenge. Something calmer. Something final. I picked up the candle gently, holding it between us. You built everything on the idea that I wouldn't speak, I said. My voice didn't shake. And tonight, you proved exactly why I had to. The flame flickered once, then steadied again. And for the first time, he had nothing left to say. No one applauded. No one spoke. The room just adjusted. Like it had finally corrected a mistake it had been ignoring all night. My husband stood there, the folder still in his hand, but it didn't belong to him anymore. Nothing did. Not the company. Not the room. Not even the version of me he thought he understood. My mother-in-law tried to step forward again, her voice trembling under forced control. Clara, let's not make this worse than it already is. I looked at her. Really looked this time. At the woman who had smirked, laughed, chipped away at me piece by piece in rooms just like this. Then I gently placed the candle back on the table. I'm not making anything worse, I said quietly. I'm just not hiding it anymore. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Because there was nothing left to twist. Nothing left to control. My husband let out a breath, sharp, uneven. So that's it? You ruin everything and walk away? I paused. Not because I didn't have an answer. But because I finally understood. I didn't owe him one. Dad, I stepped back. One small step, away from him, from the table, from the version of myself that used to stand there and endure. The broken glass crunched softly beneath my heel. For a second I thought about the pain in my ribs. But it didn't define the moment anymore. It didn't define me. I didn't ruin anything, I said, my voice calm, steady. I just stopped protecting what was already broken. Silence followed. Not heavy this time. Clean. Final. My father didn't move to guide me. Didn't need to. Because this wasn't about being saved. It never was. I walked past the guests, past the whispers that had turned into quiet respect, past the eyes that no longer judged but observed. And as I reached the doors, I felt it. Not relief. Not victory. Clarity. Behind me the room stayed exactly where it was. But I didn't. I stepped outside, into the cool night air, the silence wrapping around me like something honest for the first time in years. And somewhere deep inside, something fragile but certain settled into place. I was no longer surviving their world. I had already left it.